All right, folks, we are changing it up for this episode. Andrew Yang is getting interviewed, and we're talking about what it's like behind the scenes to do a TED Talk today on Forward.
I've been making this case in different contexts for 2.5 years, and then this TED Talk is probably the biggest and best platform that we've had for this message in 2.5 years. But if you revive even part of the enhanced child tax credit, you can unlock, let's call it $80 billion a year for poor kids. But if you spend $10 million trying to unlock the $80 billion a year in perpetuity, and you're successful, then it's something like a 1,000,000% return.
Take a little bit of percent and put it towards the plumbing.
Yes. It's true. It's a talk about a talk. It's TED on TED. But yeah, I spoke at TED a few weeks ago, and the talk was just released. And so I thought we'd debrief about all the behind the scenes stuff.
Yes.
Really, really enjoyed the heck out of it, in large part because Evelyn was there. Evelyn flew out the night before. Yeah. And so actually, let me ask this of you, Zach. What does the average person think about TED or what TED is?
I'm probably a decent person to ask because I don't pay a lot of attention to TED. I'm not a super
Yes, that's what I mean.
Right?
So everyone knows the phrase TED Talk. Even my kids know the phrase TED Talk. Like I said to them, it's like, hey, Daddy's going to speak at TED. They're like, you're doing a TED Talk?
So my experience was when I was in college, I graduated college in 2010. So if I recall, it was right around then where TED was becoming a thing. I don't know the actual date, but sometime around then I remember and they were really innovative because it was a cool version of public speaking that had to be short and it was deep. It was so someone spent a lot of time giving a good presentation on something interesting, out of the box.
Ideas worth spreading.
You could learn fast, right? And now if you're in the younger generation, you maybe haven't seen as many TED Talks, but everybody knows the meme where you basically make a take or a statement, and then at the end of it, you say, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
So thank you for coming to my TED Talk on the history of TED Talks. So to answer your question, I think when people see them now, if you're not the type that is intellectually curious in that lane or paying attention to it, or like a subscriber, I think they have members, et cetera, or people that I think you pay to watch them now in some cases. I'm not sure.
Okay, so here's the thing.
That's the answer. I don't know.
I attended TED 7 years ago as a guest of a friend, and it is a tough ticket in the sense that attending is expensive.
I remember saying this. You were like, guess the number. Like, how much did it cost? My guess was low. I was like, a couple $1,000. Go to the TED conference.
So going to the TED conference is 5 figures, and that's a lot. And so you can imagine a room of 1,700 people or so who could afford that. So I will say that you ran into celebrities there who are just attendees.
Just there to see
to see the stuff. Like I would run into CEOs that anyone here would recognize, and an actress I was really excited to meet in person, just kind of milling around the crowd. I'd been to the conference before.
And where was it this year?
To expect. It's been in Vancouver for the last 10 years, and they've kind of optimized for this waterfront location in Vancouver. Cool. It's really lovely. So I had a sense of what I was going to get going in. One of the major things, though, is that I'd never been asked to do a TED Talk before. I'd done a TEDx talk a number of years ago.
Right?
Yeah, so what TED did is they licensed some of their resources and format to different satellite locations, and it's called TEDx.
Right.
And so there are many more people, like until a month ago, like I was someone who had done a TEDx talk, but never a TED Talk.
Right.
And the way that I got invited was I did a talk about democracy reform at House Salon in New York, and someone from TED was there. And they saw
this guy.
They saw me do my thing, and then they came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, I think we're going to have you do that at TED this year." And I said, "Well, great." And then I got an invitation about 2 weeks later.
And so I actually wrote in my book, we talked about your presidential stump speech being a version of a TED Talk because it was 15 to 18 minutes in length. And I think that 18 minutes was like their
standard length. But what they did though recently is they shortened the length.
They shortened
because they're very data driven, and they figured out that people frankly click off a video after a certain number of minutes.
Well, that was the original 18 or 17 and a half, whatever it was the like basically the length of the average human attention span
it's
watching
shorter.
a video.
Sure.
And so now it's shortened down, which makes sense. Thank you, TikTok and Zuckerberg.
Yeah, so that was interesting too when they said, "Hey, we'd like you to invite you to a TED Talk," and then I did say yes because I sensed it was a big opportunity. But then I said, "How long?"
And they're like 8 minutes.
And they said to me 10 minutes, and I thought, "Wow, that's a little shorter than I remember." And they said, "Oh yeah, the duration's generally gotten shorter."
Did anyone else there get a longer TED Talk? Was there like a primo spot?
So after you get there, you realize that there's something of variance in length.
A little bit of a pecking order.
There's a little bit of
Where
a
were you in
order.
the pecking order, man?
So yeah, I was somewhere in the middle, honestly,
Okay,
in
that's not
terms of. So I was somewhere in the middle in terms of duration, but I will say that I got a very, very choice slot in terms of the weekly calendar, because what happens is the conference goes from Tuesday to Friday, maybe even Monday through Friday, and then people do come in and out. And so I spoke on Wednesday, which was apparently like the central day where if people were coming in or out, they'd be sure to be there on Wednesday.
Got it. And now the lineup this year, selfishly, with my own bias, like actually looked pretty great. Like I saw names in there that we love and we've worked with before: Scott Galloway, Barry Weiss, Bill Ackman. You probably know the rest. I mean, you know them better enough. But there are certain folks that we have.
One fun thing is
the
pop star Kesha gave a TED Talk.
Kesha gave a talk.
And so I met Kesha.
That's cool. I met her at a
fun.
club one time.
Really?
Different interaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
With Mike Posner's album party, and Kesha was there.
Really nice.
I went and said hi, and the bouncer came right up to me and pulled me away. Awful. Absolutely awful.
Good Kesha story.
Yeah.
So those were some of the speakers, and like I got a good slot. So the process was they invite me, I say yes. They then get a bunch of info from me, and so one of the things that I think most people wouldn't know and might have some curiosity about is what the preparation looks like.
Yeah, so I have like a million questions. So like, actually, let me dive in as like the idiot here in this conversation, asking the expert on TED for what that's worth. You get selected. Do they pay you? Let's start there.
That is an excellent question, and the answer is not really.
Okay.
They give you a very, very nominal amount of money. I think, frankly, just for legal consideration, because they then have rights to the talk. And if they don't pay you something, then that's not usually legal.
It becomes more complicated, so they pay.
But in my case, they did pay for flight and hotel.
Okay, flight and hotel. And then Ev you fly Ev out, but she can stay in your room, sort of thing.
Yes.
And she gets a ticket.
Yes,
to the
we do
conference.
get along well enough where she can stay in.
But I meant like she can come to the conference, or do you have to buy her ticket?
So my plus one got a deeply discounted rate.
Okay.
And so, having her come, and one of the things I will say, it's like, one, I knew I'd enjoy it more, but two, I thought she would really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
I bet
she
you
did.
Yeah. So my experience at TED was I used to run a lot of events for UBS and at Wall Street, and I used to scour like TED to find and YouTube to find good TED Talks that might be good for our clients and events, et cetera. So, and what I noticed was they're all very polished. So my question, I'm sure there's like a whole process of taking what you're good at, what you want to talk about, and to fit what they think you're good at and what they want to talk about. So what was that like? What's that process?
Yeah, so I had a big advantage in that I'd already given a talk that had led them to invite me.
Yeah.
And so I knew what they wanted me to talk about.
You weren't like an author with a good book and they're hoping you can give a good speech on it, something like that.
Yeah, so
you did have a good book.
There was something specific, but one of the interesting points was that when I spoke, it was at a house salon, and so there were no visuals. It was me just talking, and I was...
interesting.
And so now the question was, okay, what are the slides going to look like? Now, to their credit, probably, they do not start with, send us your deck. What they start with is, send us your script.
You write it out.
Yes. And so I had never actually written out a script word for word. Certainly, I'd never written out a script word for word that was meant to be 10 minutes long. And so I had to go through that work. And And their attitude about the slides is, look, we're not going to have you make the slides until we're comfortable with the script, because we might edit your script or have comments.
Well, that's nice of them somewhat.
Yeah,
There's nothing worse than making it like a really detailed, complex slide.
Yeah, and then having them toss it. So and by the way, the other thing, their credit. So I spoke in April. They start writing you for the script in either December or January. So there's like a run up where they're after you for this stuff months in advance. Mm-hmm. And then we sent the script, and then they said okay, and then they have a coach that they assign to you who then has you read the script with them, and then after the script, then they say, okay, send the slides, and then you do another run through with the script and the slides, and then they schedule a dress rehearsal between you and TED personnel that are not your coach to give you the real, I guess the real feedback.
So let me back up one step. When you say I read the script to them, do you like read it like you were performing it, like you were, or did you just they read it, you read it, and you just talked it through?
Read it like I was performing.
Oh wow! It's like do your talk right now.
Yeah, just do the talk. No, they said you can read it, so it wasn't like a memorization thing. And when you give the actual talk, there's no teleprompter.
So you got to know that.
And so most people, like memorize it more or less. So there were some light accommodations. They said, hey, if you want, we can have certain words pop up on the screen when like certain slides come up, but that's not that helpful, honestly.
Yeah. Like, you're good at this too. I mean, you are a professional.
And I will say, like there was part of me, because I've done a lot of these types of things, where I ordinarily would not have gone through all these steps myself, honestly. If you would just say, hey, you give a talk in April, I'll be like, all right, I'll see you like the day before.
Yeah. Well, you're a pro though. You're speaking a lot.
I mean, all the time. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow and subscribe. A little bit of background on TED. TED is a nonprofit, and in an acronym that stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. Now, it's kind of gone off of those things in various directions. They have a lot of scientists there, but that is TED. It's a nonprofit. It's one reason why I'm sure they don't pay.
That's fair. And yeah, they do a lot of social science now. They do things that are outside of tech, entertainment, design, but.
Oh yeah, one of them, the speeches when we were there was about how to stay married. It's about is John Gottman and his wife on love, which we could all use more of.
Oh, that's a good question. What did you learn from others while you're there? Anything like that? What stood out that you took away?
So certainly how to stay married. Keyed into that.
How do you stay married?
So there are 4 horsemen that can destroy a relationship. And the one that really sticks with you is contempt, like expressions of contempt. And this is the most frightening thing, is that they can tell, hang out with you for 10 minutes within 90% accuracy rate, whether you're still going to stay married to that person.
They watch you, right?
They watch and they record some things, and not even long. It's like, I get a 15-minute video of you guys. I can tell with a 90% accuracy whether you're going to be married 10 years later. And so they joke that it's like they're no one invites them to dinner anymore because they can suss that out. But so that I mean, that was a fascinating talk.
That's terrifying.
So if you want that one, you can look up John Gottman.
Carl, don't worry. We just did an event this weekend, and I was talking to Coleman Hughes about speaking publicly. He's like, if I don't speak for 2 weeks, I'm rusty. I'm really rusty. And you're because he doesn't normally speak like that. Like he doesn't normally, he's not always doing a book tour. You're always doing a version of a speaking tour.
Yeah, it's a rare week. I mean, I used to joke, it's like, oh, it's a strange day if I don't have a microphone strapped to my body at some point or in front of my face. I mean, so
a weird life you live.
So I'm looking at the steps. It's script plus slides, rehearsal, and then they have you do a dress rehearsal on the TED stage in Vancouver.
The rehearsal you said though, is that in person somewhere?
So it's meant to be in person. In my case, it would have been in New York, but then I had some last minute snafu, and so they ended up making it virtual. But that was not the preference.
And you're probably an exception too, where they know you've. Like there's certain folks that Scott Galloway gives speeches all the time. He used to be a professor. There's certain folks that probably are like,
you'll be fine.
You're not going to fall over up there. But I think I read Brene Brown, I think is her name. She had never done a talk like that before. But she's talked about the TED experience, that sort of thing. You like get used to. There's some of them that are like more hand holding, I imagine, because they're all good. The quality of these things are good, so they coach you up.
Yeah, it was interesting too. Is I tried to be generous about the process because I thought, well, there's some people that are having on that have never spoken in this format before,
right.
And I will say that the stage environment is fairly intense, where you do have 1,700 people in this bowl, and then you go out and there's this stage. When I was backstage with Scott Galloway ahead of time, we were joking about it's like, hey, it's funny how this process kind of makes you nervous, even if you're someone who like would not get nervous about this sort of thing. And I got to say though, I loved the experience, and then I went out there and it felt like presidential rally in a particular way, where the intensity and the energy were really high.
A lot of cheers and things like that going on.
Yeah, like and I was pumped up. It felt like a big swing or a big opportunity, in that you have a sense that minimum hundreds of thousands of people are going to see this, maximum millions of people are going to see this. And one of the things that hit me was that I talk about these issues in different environments very, very often. And I realized it's like, wait a minute, if I spend my time like for example, at House Party, I spoke to 40 people. I'll like go and talk about something else in the hopes that maybe people will take an interest. It's like, if I get to talk about the core message to maybe millions of people, and 1,700 people there, some of whom are real potential needle movers.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually a big fucking opportunity, and I need to treat it as such. And so the day before, it actually felt like the day before one of the presidential debates, where I was in my hotel room pacing, and you already know your stuff, but you're still kind of practicing,
of course,
various things.
It's a big speech. Yeah,
it's like, it was like a big speech. And then I think I benefited so much from having had that context, because I, like, the night before, and then Evelyn shows up, and I was like, hey, how are you doing as a prep and whatnot? And I thought, I said to her, it's like, look, the main thing is just that I'm actually present and excited to be there, and my energy is high. And if those things are on, then it's going to be great. And I got to say, I finished my talk, and I got a standing ovation.
Standing O.
People were really pumped. I did have dozens of people for the next 2 days tell me that it was the high point of the conference for them. A lot of people asking how they can help. And so my goal is that, frankly, that TED Talk will lead to millions of dollars for democracy reform.
Yeah. So I was texting John Liu, our producer, one of our producers now, but you got a couple producers in your world now. But he was texting me how to go, how to do it, because it's not public yet.
Yeah.
He goes, "Went great. You got a standing O," and not everybody did, right? And I remember my reaction when he said that was, "Oh, that's not surprising," because you prepping and taking it, like, not that you don't take things seriously, but some, like, where you're like spending weeks and months in this case prepping, like. Yeah, of course. Like, you're gonna be the Andrew Yang, like the shining Andrew Yang, which is great, and exciting, because I think there's no better time. This is the time for your message. You were like, in the same way with UBI, some sense, where you were somewhat early, obviously late in terms of, like, Trump got elected and like the automation like dismantled, but
totally. But early in terms of
no one else when COVID hit, cash relief was the intimate, like, that was the right time for cash relief, but you had primed the pump for three years or so. In this case, you were screaming from mountaintop in 2021 or so about the two-party system ripping people apart and why the primaries are broken, et cetera. And you're like, we're going to have Trump Biden again in this case because of the way the system's set up. And no one cared yet, in the sense
because it wasn't real yet.
And the election won't happen. And now we're all like, wait a tick. Like, why? Like, we're all unhappy, and we have the exact same election we had.
Hey all, if you know me, you know I'm not that handy in the kitchen, and I have become a huge believer and booster of Factor. Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals make eating a joy. It's so fast, you just pop that thing 2 minutes later, and you are eating a restaurant-quality, healthy meal, making you feel excellent about yourself. My favorite is the turkey chili with zucchini, and there is so much more to choose from. You never get tired of it. It fits any budget. It's fast, healthy. It is going to be the new Factor in your life. Yes, I'm a fan. Head to factormeals.com/yang50 and use code yang50 to get 50% off your first box and 2 free wellness shots per box while subscription is active. That's code yang50 at factormeals.com/yang50 to get 50% off your first box. Get Factor today. It's going to change the way you eat. I've done some reflecting, Zach. It's funny because you're right. Fall 2021, Forward comes out. I've been making this case in different contexts for 2.5 years. And then this TED Talk is probably the biggest and best platform that we've had for this message in 2.5 years. And there was a significant part of me that's like, okay, I've been hitting this for 2.5 years. If you spend 2.5 years on something and then you get a big swing, like this talk that hopefully getting it seen by millions, like that's actually pretty good and like a standard timeline for entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? Like if you start something in fall of 21, it's not like, oh, the like whole world like
by spring of 2022 you're on fire.
Yeah. And the same was kind of true on the presidential, where you and I were hatching plans in my mom's bedroom, like late 17, early 2018.
Yeah.
Or even to use like the book of that time. So War Normal People comes out in 2018, doesn't make a splash. Like no one cares. Comes out, and then as a campaign gains steam and whatnot, ends up hitting the bestseller list like a year and a half later. And the rest of it, and so the fact that you have this kind of lag, even please not to like actually compare me to this figure, but apparently when MLK wrote Letter from Birmingham Jail, it's not like the Letter from Birmingham Jail, it was a big deal at the time. It was not. It's all everyone's like, oh, he wrote this letter. Yeah, it was years later, I think even after he was assassinated, where everyone then started treating it like it was a very serious piece of political writing.
It's one of the, like, we see these people get famous out of nowhere, or they seemingly they blow up, and we're like, holy cow, and it's ideas, it's people, it's moving. But a lot of the time it's like the analogy an entrepreneur gave me is like, it's like bamboo. Bamboo takes like 2 years to grow like a foot. It takes forever, and then it grows 10 feet in a week, in 2 weeks.
I did not know that about bamboo, but that is dope.
It shoots up.
And that is a very, very good parallel
analogy. And don't quote me those numbers on timing, but it's something very like long time to grow a little bit and then really fast on the top. And it's for, I think, anything like this where there's something about human beings where there's that normalcy in some sense that you need to have, where it's not a completely new figure idea. It's something that's been like brewing for a while, and it doesn't feel like it's become more culturalized. I think Jonathan Haidt, So I think Jonathan Haidt's kind of career arc is actually a good example, where he's been saying smart things intelligently for a while, combined with a lot of people talking about the problems of social media for a while. And then I know Peggy Noonan wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal. Like, sometimes there's just a moment where everybody knows something, it's been brewing for a while, and someone like nails it on the head. And right now he went everywhere for about 2 weeks on every podcast, the whole book. And now there's a lot of talk among parents like, maybe we should real talk. We should probably not have our kids have cell phones until they're 16.
I mean, Haidt is a good example where if people understood what he wrote in The Righteous Mind now, probably over a decade ago, then we'd have completely different political conversations and everything else. And that book influenced me very deeply. But then he just keeps on going, where he had Coddling of the American Mind. Now he has the Anxious Generation. And it's something I admire about him a lot. It's something I've been reflecting on too, because I've written 3 books, and I wrote about this last month. But every time I've written a book, it's been about something to do, something I'm doing. And now I'm very, very confident that uh, nothing really that awesome is going to happen out of our government unless we have these kind of structural reforms. And I'm now chiseling away at those reforms. And I will say that, like, I haven't had it in me to like, I looked at Jonathan's new book and be like, oh, that's phenomenal. It's like a really awesome case to make. And now he's going around doing it. What's funny is, I guess what I'm suggesting is, like, I'm still making the same case because I think it's the prime domino. And because of that, I don't have it in me to, like, write another book about another thing, because I'm like, hey, this is the thing.
Yeah.
Like, we had, and someone came up to me after after I got off the stage at TED, congratulated me and said, "Is it just me, or does the future of Western civilization hinge on whether whether you're successful or whether these issues get resolved?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, that's the sense I got."
Yeah.
In 10 minutes. I mean, one of the things I joke about in the talk is like, "Hey, I've got 10 minutes to tell you why America's political system's not working, how to fix it." And that was like a really interesting forcing function too. I'm super grateful to TED for the opportunity, for the venue, for the rigor, for the platform, for assembling the humans involved. Like, the humans in that space, some of them were, frankly, like, the kind of people with the resources where you could, like, really move the needle. And then stack on top of that the hopefully millions of people that see the talk. Right. And I was thinking to myself too, and I was talking to Evelyn about it. It's like, if you look at the levels of opportunities or platforms, there aren't many that get any better than TED.
Yeah,
if you think about it, it's like, you think, okay, how can you reach millions of people? This is one of the only ways to do so.
This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. I've always been a mattress guy because I figured if I'm going to do something for up to 8 hours, maybe I should do it right. And Helix Sleep lets you do it right by sending you one of 20 unique mattresses that's tailored for you. I took the Helix Sleep quiz, takes only a couple minutes, and I was matched with a Helix Dawn mattress because I wanted something that felt firm and I sleep on my back. That mattress is exactly what I needed, but strangely enough, my kids now seek out that mattress in the house and want to sleep on it even though I did not order it with them in mind. If you have a high quality mattress, it is a game changer, a huge difference maker. Don't take my word for it. Helix has been awarded the #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. It is even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/yang. That's helixsleep.com/yang. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
Yeah, that, like, if you think about a way that you're going to reach 1 million plus people, it's
captive people too. Like, you can go
attentive people.
Yes, you go on Fox and they get 2 million in prime time, but they're not all paying attention. A chunk of those are airports, a chunk of those are bars.
Yeah, and it's a rhythm too. It's like you're gonna do a 6-minute thing on Fox News, whereas this is like someone will actually hear you, hopefully pay attention to the idea, maybe even take action.
Right.
And so it's as you can tell, like, I'm really, really excited about it. And so a couple of takeaways too. It's like, if you ever have a chance to speak at TED, like someone taps you, like, you should definitely do it. Yeah, because it's a tremendous experience. Attending TED, like the one time I went before this, frankly, I was gearing up to run for president, and I thought, let me go out there and see if I can, convince some people to get behind me. It didn't really work, honestly. Like, it was like before, because I hadn't declared or anything. I was just a dude at this conference. And I mean, I had some friends there, and was doing a little bit of nudgy. It was a very, very significant investment to attend then. I did write a little bit about in the War on Normal People as the counterpoint to declining industrial towns, like, the most abundant environment in the world, like freaking TED conference, because people just, because like there's swag everywhere, free stuff everywhere. I joked about how you sit down to try some meditation app, and then when you get up, they gave me $100 gift certificate to Lululemon. And then you're like, well, I am in a better mood, but I'm not sure if it's because the meditation worked or you just gave me a freaking $100 gift card. So it's that kind of environment. So if you have an opportunity to go, I mean, obviously, like hopefully your company's paying for it or something.
Yeah. On someone else's dime is the move.
But it is a very, very abundant, positive environment where people are optimistic about the power of ideas to change the world. And so it was uplifting on that level too. Uplifting to share with Evelyn as well. I mean, we came away buzzing about the experience.
That's exciting. So what? That's really exciting. What do you think happens next? And in your talk, you basically say some version of it's probably what $200 million or so can get ranked choice voting and open primaries across the finish line in a lot of states, at least half, right? I think is your number. Let me know if I get those numbers wrong.
So the estimate I had was it's $200 million to take a shot at it in 10 states and maybe succeed in 5. So $20 million a state. But I have an update, real time.
Okay.
Drum roll. Is that right now the combined capital to fix the primaries in states this November is about $38 million raised, and they're going for 65 million. So they're trying to raise another 27 million, probably realistically by September to be able to deploy
who's
effectively.
They is
it's Unite America, it's the Institute for Political Innovation, it's the movement that's trying to fund. It's the Forward folks.
Yep.
It's folks who are trying to fund a more rational set of incentives. And so it's real, I mean, that was one of the benefits too of this talk. It's like, look, this is not pie in the sky stuff. This has happened in several states. There are already tens of millions behind it. And if it has enough energy and momentum, we can meaningfully improve our politics. This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. A few decades ago, private citizens used to be largely that. Private. What's changed? The internet. Think about everything you've browsed, searched for, watched, or tweeted. Now imagine all of that data being crawled through, collected, and aggregated by third parties into a permanent public record. Your record. Having your private life exposed for others to see was once something only celebrities worried about. But in an era where everyone is online, everyone is a public figure. To keep my data private when I go online, I turn to ExpressVPN. Do you know there are hundreds of data brokers out there whose sole business is to buy and sell our data? The worst part is you don't know what they're doing. You don't get to have your say. That's why I use ExpressVPN. Just hit one button and then your internet connection gets rerouted through an encrypted server. No one can see your IP address. You're completely in your own private internet. Every time I turn ExpressVPN on, I'm given a random IP address shared by other ExpressVPN customers. That makes it harder for third parties to track me and harvest my data. No matter what device you're on, you just hit one button and you get your own protected connection. So if, like me, you believe that your data is your business, secure yourself with the #1 rated VPN on the market. Visit expressvpn.com/yang and get 3 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/yang. Go to expressvpn.com/yang to learn more.
My wife and I were talking about like nonprofit or charity ROI. That was a big thing when I was in client philanthropy advice or advisory world. And it's, what's the good that's getting generated from my dollar? And we've gotten to a point where so many of our problems are massive in scale. Government needs to happen. And what she was saying was like, if I'm looking at ROI from what we give, it's versions of what you've done with Humanity Forward. It's lobbying and legislative unlocks.
Yeah. A techie I met last month just came to the same conclusion. It's like, look, the highest leverage, highest impact thing I can do with my money is to try and get our government working well enough so that it can deploy some of its massive resources. And I'll be talking to Liam about this on the podcast pretty soon. But if you revive even part of the enhanced child tax credit, you can unlock, let's call it $80 billion a year for poor kids.
Yes.
And so if you were to spend 10 million in pursuing that, you could give 10 million to poor kids, which I obviously endorse. But if you spend 10 million trying to unlock the 80 billion a year in perpetuity, and you're successful, then it's, you know, something like a 1,000,000% return, like in a compressed time frame. And you know why so many companies lobby? Because it fucking works. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so like that, there's like a chance that we can make something good happen. And so the fact that this techie came to that conclusion gives me hope, because there's so many philanthropists who are pumping money to climate change, to education, these various things that are not going to get solved unless government gets its act together. So what we have to do is invest a fraction of those resources.
They all need to take a little bit of percent and put it towards the plumbing.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And that was in many ways the message behind the TED Talk. But yeah, man, this is the highest leverage activity. It doesn't, it doesn't pull the emotional strings that some others do.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Like it doesn't incite your tribalism in the same way. I mean, really, and I keep talking about this. It's like, look, this is the tribe that wants to fix things, and the tribe does not need to be 51% of us. It only needs to be approximately, in my view, 5 to 10% of us. But you get that 5 to 10%, then we can fix things. And I hope that this TED Talk helps make that clearer to people.
So, what's the name of the TED Talk?
You know, they're going to A/B test the shit out of it.
Oh, they're going to test it. So it's TBD.
Yeah.
Some version of saving the country.
Yeah, but if you just look up Andrew Yang TED Talk, if you like it, please do spread the word. But I'm proud of it, and I hope you're excited about getting it out there.
Andrew Yang on TED.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, on my TED Talk. Very meta.